Imagine an ancient civilization older than Rome, older than classical Greece, and as old as the pyramids of Egypt. Now imagine that this civilization built perfectly planned cities, advanced sanitation systems, and standardized buildings across thousands of kilometers, yet left behind no kings. No royal palaces, no crowns, no thrones, no statues of rulers claiming power. Not even a single royal name. This is not a myth or exaggeration. This is the Indus Valley Civilization, and it presents one of the most unsettling questions in human history: who ruled one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth if no rulers can be found? Between roughly 2600 and 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization spread across a massive region covering present-day Pakistan and northwest India. At its height, it was one of the largest civilizations in the ancient world, larger in area than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dhalavira, and Lothal were home to tens of thousands of people. This was not a primitive society. It was urban, organized, and remarkably consistent in how it built and managed its cities. What immediately strikes archaeologists is the level of planning. Streets follow straight grid patterns. Neighborhoods are carefully divided. Houses are built using standardized kiln-fired bricks, the same proportions appearing again and again across distant cities. Beneath the streets ran covered drainage systems that carried waste away efficiently. Many homes had private wells and bathrooms connected to these drains. This level of coordination suggests strong organization and shared rules. Nothing about these cities feels accidental. In most ancient civilizations, such order is imposed by visible authority. In Egypt, power was embodied in a pharaoh, whose image dominated temples and tombs. In Mesopotamia, kings ruled from massive palaces and recorded their achievements on stone tablets. Authority was meant to be seen, remembered, and feared. Power announced itself loudly. But in the Indus Valley, something feels different. The cities are impressive, but they do not glorify individuals. Despite more than a century of excavations, archaeologists have not found a single structure that can be clearly identified as a royal palace. There is no building that stands far above the rest in size or luxury. Homes vary slightly, but not dramatically. There is no clear separation between an elite ruling class and ordinary citizens. Even the largest public structures, such as the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro, appear communal rather than royal. The absence becomes even more striking when we look at burials. In many ancient societies, rulers ensured their memory through monumental tombs. Pyramids, royal graves, and lavish burial goods were tools of power even in death. In the Indus Valley, graves are modest. Some contain ornaments or pottery, others less so, but none display extreme wealth or dominance. There is no burial monument that unmistakably signals that this person ruled us all. Death, it seems, was not used as a stage for authority. The Indus people also used writing. Thousands of seals have been discovered, carved with symbols and often animal figures. These seals were likely used for trade and identification. But unlike Mesopotamian inscriptions, they do not tell stories of conquest, divine kingship, or law codes. No ruler boasts of victories. No king claims the favor of the gods. No laws are carved into stone for all to see. Political power, if it existed, was not advertised. And yet, the civilization functioned smoothly for centuries. Trade networks connected the Indus Valley to Mesopotamia. Goods were standardized. Weights and measures followed consistent systems. Urban planning rules were followed across cities separated by hundreds of kilometers. This level of uniformity is impossible without coordination. Civilization does not organize itself by accident. This contradiction lies at the heart of the mystery. The Indus Valley shows strong control, but no visible controller. It shows shared rules, but no lawgiver. It shows order, but no throne. One possible explanation is that power in the Indus Valley was not centered on individuals, but embedded in systems. Instead of kings commanding from palaces, authority may have operated through councils, administrators, or merchant groups. Trade appears to have been extremely important, and seals suggest regulation rather than propaganda. Leadership may have been collective, practical, and deliberately understated. Another possibility is that the Indus people simply did not believe in displaying power the way other civilizations did. Their values may have emphasized balance, cleanliness, and functionality over dominance and spectacle. Instead of carving statues of rulers, they invested in drainage systems. Instead of building pyramids, they built wells. Instead of glorifying kings, they maintained cities. This idea challenges a deep assumption we carry about human societies, that complexity requires strong rulers and visible hierarchy. The Indus Valley suggests another model. A civilization where authority was subtle, shared, or even deliberately hidden. Where power was felt not through fear, but through reliability. Where leadership meant maintenance rather than domination. If this is true, then the Indus Valley represents one of the most radical experiments in human history. A large, complex society that may have functioned without kings, without emperors, and without loud symbols of power. That does not make it weaker. In fact, it may explain its long stability. As we look at these silent cities today, their streets empty but still orderly, we are left with an uncomfortable thought. What if the greatest civilizations are not the ones that shout their power, but the ones that quietly make life work? What if true authority leaves behind clean water, safe streets, and shared systems, not statues and names? The Indus Valley does not give us easy answers. It gives us absence, silence, and balance. And sometimes, what is missing tells us more than what survives. In the next part, the mystery deepens even further. Because despite the absence of kings, the Indus Valley shows signs of strict regulation and shared standards across an enormous region. How was order maintained? Who enforced the rules? And what kind of leadership leaves no face behind? The absence of kings in the Indus Valley does not mean the absence of control. In fact, when archaeologists look closely at the material evidence, they see something almost paradoxical. This civilization was not loose or chaotic. It was disciplined, standardized, and remarkably consistent across vast distances. Order existed everywhere, but it did not come with a face. One of the clearest signs of this hidden order is standardization. Across cities hundreds of kilometers apart, the same brick proportions were used again and again. The ratio of length, width, and height remained almost identical from Harappa to Mohenjo-daro to Dhalavira. This level of uniformity requires agreement, enforcement, and long-term continuity. Builders were not improvising. They were following rules that everyone understood. The same pattern appears in weights and measures. Archaeologists have found stone weights in perfectly calibrated ratios, suggesting a shared measurement system used across the civilization. This would have been essential for trade, taxation, and storage. A merchant in one city could trust that a weight in another city meant the same thing. That trust does not happen naturally. It is created by regulation. Urban planning reinforces this idea. Streets were not only straight, they followed specific orientations. Residential areas were carefully separated from industrial zones. Workshops dealing with potentially harmful processes, such as pottery firing or metalwork, were placed away from living spaces. This shows concern for public health and safety, something rarely seen in ancient cities. Someone, or some group, was thinking beyond individual households and planning for the community as a whole. Water management provides even stronger evidence of organized control. Wells were carefully constructed, often lined with brick to prevent collapse. Drainage systems were covered, maintained, and cleaned. Sloped floors directed wastewater efficiently into main drains. In some cities, access points were built into the drainage system so it could be serviced. This was not just engineering skill, it was civic discipline. For a drainage system to function, people must follow rules consistently. Yet, once again, there is no sign of an elite ruling class enforcing these rules through force. There are no fortresses dominating city centers. City walls exist in some places, but they appear more related to flood control or boundary marking than military defense. Weapons are relatively rare. There is little evidence of large-scale warfare. Power, it seems, was not maintained through violence. This leads many scholars to believe that authority in the Indus Valley was decentralized but coordinated. Instead of a single ruler issuing commands, governance may have operated through councils or administrative bodies. These could have included merchants, skilled craftsmen, religious leaders, or elders. Decisions may have been made collectively and enforced through shared norms rather than fear. Trade likely played a central role in this system. The Indus Valley was deeply connected to regional and long-distance trade networks. Goods such as beads, seals, metals, and textiles moved not only within the civilization but also to distant regions like Mesopotamia. Trade requires trust, regulation, and dispute resolution. Seals may have functioned as identifiers, guaranteeing quality or ownership. This suggests a system where reputation and accountability mattered more than royal authority. Religion, too, may have shaped social order. While we do not see grand temples, we do see repeated symbolic motifs, such as animal figures and ritual objects. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro is particularly revealing. It appears to have been a public, possibly ritual space, carefully waterproofed and centrally located. This suggests shared beliefs and communal practices. Religious or moral authority may have reinforced social rules, reducing the need for coercion. What makes the Indus system so unusual is its balance. There is evidence of hierarchy, but not extreme inequality. There is control, but not oppression. There is organization, but not glorification of power. This balance may have been intentional. By avoiding concentration of power in individuals, the civilization may have reduced internal conflict and instability. However, such a system also has vulnerabilities. When authority is distributed and subtle, it depends heavily on shared values and environmental stability. If those values weaken, or if external pressures grow, the system may struggle to respond quickly. Unlike a kingdom with a central ruler who can mobilize resources rapidly, a consensus-based system moves slowly. This raises an important question. If the Indus Valley was governed by systems rather than kings, how did it handle crisis? Floods, climate shifts, changes in river patterns, or trade disruptions would have tested the limits of such governance. Archaeological evidence suggests that over time, some cities were rebuilt, modified, or abandoned. Standards began to loosen. Brick ratios changed. Urban planning became less strict. This gradual breakdown hints at something important. The Indus Valley did not collapse suddenly under invasion or conquest. Instead, its order slowly faded. That is exactly what we might expect from a civilization where control was embedded in systems rather than enforced by rulers. When those systems weakened, there was no single authority to restore them. Rather than seeing this as a failure, it may be more accurate to see it as the cost of an extraordinary experiment. For centuries, the Indus Valley maintained large, complex cities without relying on kings, emperors, or divine rulers. It prioritized collective well-being over monumental ego. It invested in infrastructure rather than intimidation. The quiet order of the Indus Valley forces us to rethink what power looks like. Control does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it is hidden in brick sizes, drainage slopes, and shared measurements. Sometimes, the most disciplined societies are the least noisy. As the Indus cities slowly changed and people adapted to new conditions, their political invisibility became their greatest mystery. Without inscriptions explaining decisions or rulers claiming responsibility, we are left to read power through patterns, not proclamations. And that leads us to the next, even deeper question. If the Indus Valley was ruled by systems and shared norms rather than kings, then why did it ultimately fade away? Was this model too fragile for long-term survival, or did environmental forces overwhelm even the most balanced society? Leadership and into climate, rivers, and survival itself, and that is where the next chapter begins. If the Indus Valley Civilization was not ruled by kings, and if its authority lived inside systems rather than individuals, then its decline cannot be explained by the usual stories of conquest or collapse. To understand what happened next, we have to look away from palaces and armies and turn our attention to something far more powerful than any ruler, the environment itself. For most of its existence, the Indus Valley depended on a delicate relationship with rivers. The Indus River and its many tributaries shaped agriculture, trade routes, and settlement patterns. Seasonal floods brought fertile soil, but they also carried risk. The civilization's success suggests that for centuries, these rivers behaved in relatively predictable ways, allowing cities to thrive and expand. But rivers are not loyal allies. Geological and climate studies show that during the late phase of the Indus Valley Civilization, river systems began to change. Some rivers gradually shifted course. Others weakened or dried up over time. One of the most debated examples is the Gagarhakra River system, which many scholars believe once supported large Indus settlements before slowly losing its water source. These changes did not happen overnight. They unfolded over generations. Crops failed more often. Floods became less predictable. Some regions faced drought while others experienced destructive flooding. For a civilization whose strength lay in balance and coordination, these environmental stresses posed a serious challenge. Archaeological layers tell this story quietly. In later phases of Indus cities, rebuilding becomes more irregular. Brick quality declines. Standardization fades. Drainage systems are repaired less carefully or abandoned altogether. Urban planning, once so precise, begins to loosen. This does not look like a civilization destroyed by violence. It looks like one adapting under pressure. As conditions worsened, people began to move. Large cities slowly lost population. Smaller settlements and villages increased. Instead of maintaining massive urban centers, communities spread out, likely searching for more reliable water sources and farmland. This shift suggests resilience rather than collapse. People were not wiped out, they reorganized. However, this decentralization may have weakened the very systems that once held the civilization together. Shared standards depend on dense networks of interaction. When populations scatter, coordination becomes harder. Trade routes shrink. Local practices replace universal rules. The invisible authority that once unified the Indus world began to dissolve. Climate data supports this interpretation. Studies indicate a broader shift toward drier conditions across the region around 2000 BCE. Monsoon patterns weakened. Rainfall became less reliable. For an agricultural society without centralized emergency control, these changes would have been devastating over time. This is where the Indus model reveals both its strength and its weakness. A system built on cooperation, shared norms, and balance works beautifully under stable conditions. But when those conditions change rapidly, adaptation requires decisive coordination. Without kings or centralized power, responses may have been fragmented. Yet it would be a mistake to view this outcome as failure. Unlike civilizations that collapsed violently, the Indus Valley seems to have transformed. Cultural practices continued. Pottery styles evolved. Rural communities carried forward elements of Indus life long after cities were abandoned. The civilization did not vanish, it faded into new forms. This challenges how we define collapse. If people survive, adapt, and carry their culture forward, can we truly call it an end? Or is it simply a transition away from urban life under changing environmental realities? The silence of the Indus Valley becomes even more meaningful here. Without kings to record defeat or victory, the story is written in soil, bricks, and broken streets. The absence of dramatic destruction may itself be the answer. There was no empire to fall, no throne to overturn. The Indus Valley's decline suggests that power without spectacle leaves behind a different kind of history. One where survival matters more than glory. One where adaptation matters more than domination. The people adjusted their lives rather than fighting to preserve cities that no longer serve them. This perspective forces us to rethink what makes a civilization successful. Is it longevity of monuments, or the ability of people to adapt? The Indus Valley did not leave towering ruins, but it may have left something more important, a lesson in balance. In many ways, the Indus experiment feels surprisingly modern. Today, we struggle with climate change, shifting environments, and systems under stress. We rely on invisible infrastructure, shared rules, and cooperation more than on individual rulers. Like the Indus people, we depend on stability that we often take for granted. Their story warns us that systems matter, but they are fragile. They require maintenance, trust, and adaptability. When environmental conditions shift, even the most balanced society must evolve or disperse. As the great cities emptied and life moved toward smaller communities, the Indus Valley quietly stepped out of history's spotlight. No dramatic ending. No final battle. Just change. And that quiet ending may be the most powerful clue of all. A civilization that lived without kings also ended without collapse, reminding us that power does not always shout, and history does not always end with fire. When we look back at ancient history, we often tell the same story again and again. Civilizations rise through strong rulers, expand through power, and fall through conquest or chaos. Kings build monuments. Empires leave scars. History, as it is usually told, belongs to those who shouted the loudest. The Indus Valley Civilization does not fit into that story, and that may be why it was forgotten for so long. Compared to Egypt's pyramids or Mesopotamia's ziggurats, the Indus Valley appears quiet. There are no colossal statues of rulers staring into eternity. No long inscriptions praising victories. No dramatic myths carved into stone. For a long time, this silence was mistaken for simplicity. But the deeper we look, the clearer it becomes that the Indus Valley was not simple at all. It was restrained. This restraint forces us to reconsider what power actually means. In most ancient societies, power was concentrated and visible. It was personal. A king ruled, commanded labor, and enforced obedience. Stability depended on authority flowing downward from the top. The Indus Valley seems to have inverted this model. Power flowed horizontally through systems, shared standards, and collective responsibility. Instead of glorifying rulers, the Indus people invested in infrastructure. Instead of monumental tombs, they built wells. Instead of divine kingship, they built trust in measurements, bricks, and urban rules. Their cities suggest that they valued predictability over personality. Order over ego. Function over fame. This approach may explain why their civilization remained stable for so long. Without power struggles between dynasties, without elites competing for visibility, and without rulers asserting dominance through war, the Indus Valley avoided many of the internal conflicts that plagued other ancient societies. Their cities show little evidence of violent destruction. Their tools and weapons are minimal. Their energy appears to have gone into living well rather than ruling hard. Yet this same restraint may also explain why they faded from memory. Civilizations that celebrate kings leave behind names and stories. The Indus Valley left behind systems. And systems, once abandoned, are harder to remember than faces. Without written histories praising rulers, later generations had little narrative to inherit. The Indus story also raises uncomfortable questions about modern assumptions. We often believe that large societies require strong centralized control to survive. We assume hierarchy is inevitable. But here is a civilization that may have operated without kings, without palaces, and without visible coercion, and still functioned on an enormous scale. This does not mean the Indus Valley was perfect or utopian. Inequality likely existed. Authority was real, even if unseen. Decisions were made, rules enforced, and order maintained. But the way power was expressed appears fundamentally different. It was quiet, practical, and deeply embedded in daily life. In many ways, the Indus Valley feels closer to the modern world than to its ancient neighbors. Today, most of the power shaping our lives is invisible. It exists in infrastructure, regulations, systems, and shared norms. Roads, water systems, supply chains, and institutions affect us far more than individual leaders. Like the Indus people, we rely on stability we rarely notice until it fails. Their decline also carries a lesson. Systems can be strong, but they are not eternal. Environmental change, social shifts, and loss of coordination can slowly unravel even the most balanced societies. Without centralized authority to force adaptation, societies must rely on collective flexibility. The Indus Valley adapted by dispersing, by changing how and where people lived. Survival, not spectacle, was the priority. Perhaps that is the most important takeaway. The Indus Valley Civilization did not chase immortality through monuments. It did not seek to dominate history. It focused on living sustainably within its environment, and when that environment changed, it changed too. History often rewards loudness with remembrance. But maybe true success is not about being remembered, it is about lasting long enough to matter, and adapting well enough to endure. The cities of the Indus Valley may lie in ruins, but their ideas remain provocative. They challenge our belief that power must have a face. They question whether hierarchy is destiny. They suggest that cooperation can rival command, and that stability does not always need spectacle. As we face our own global challenges, climate shifts, urban stress, fragile systems, the silent lessons of the Indus Valley feel more relevant than ever. A civilization that trusted systems over rulers, balance over dominance, and function over glory still speaks to us, even without words. The Indus Valley may not tell us who ruled. But it tells us something far more valuable, that human societies have more choices than we often imagine. And perhaps the greatest mystery is not why we cannot find their kings, but why we stopped building civilizations like theirs.